Tennessee is beyond dominant, and they've played a weak strength of schedule, I know. But this team is murdering people left and right. They put up a 70-burger on Kent State, they annihilated NC State, and they killed Chattanooga, which neither of those teams are impressive in any way. But when you look at Oklahoma, and who Oklahoma's played, they have played Temple, they have played Tulane, and Houston. And neither of those teams are all that impressive either. Yes, on an average basis, they're better than what Tennessee has played, most likely, because NC State would probably be favored over any team that Oklahoma played. But that's why Tennessee's a 7-point favorite on the road, and Oklahoma's environment is not lame. Their stadium's not tiny. So really what these people are telling you here, the Vegas experts, are saying that Tennessee would beat Oklahoma by double digits at a neutral field. That's what they're telling you. And Oklahoma won this matchup, I believe, in overtime in 2015, 31-24. That was the last meeting between these two teams. This will be the first time that Josh Heupel is back in Norman, Oklahoma, since he was fired at the end of the 2014 season. And Josh Heupel was a quarterback at Oklahoma. So there's a lot of emotion and a lot of, it gets personal, if you know what I mean, in this game here, in this top 15 matchup between Oklahoma and between Tennessee. Tennessee is rated inside of the top 10 at 6th. Oklahoma is 15th in the AP poll. And when you look at these teams from a broad stroke view, that's what we love to do here on College Football with Sam. Tennessee in FPI is about 11 points, 10.9 points exactly better than Oklahoma. And per S&P Plus from Bill Connolly, Tennessee is around 9.7 exactly points better than Oklahoma. Tennessee is 24.4 per FPI and 26.5 per S&P Plus points better than the average college football team. And they're top 25 in every power rating. In fact, in FPI, they're ranked higher than Georgia right now. Oklahoma, 13.5 points in FPI and 16.8 points in SP+. Those numbers say that Oklahoma's about 2 scores better than the average college football team. And they started the year in the top 10. They have been sinking in power ratings, particularly in FPI, because FPI cares more about point friendliness and quarterback play and style points, and SP Plus is more, tempo based, I think is more complex, less reactive. And I think that's fair because Oklahoma still is a really good defense and they do have talent on offense, and they've unfortunately been dealing with injuries there. But Tennessee is universally viewed as the superior team by Football Power and by S&P Plus and by the analysts. They're favored by 7, and many people have already picked them to go into Norman and make it a bloodletting based off of the first 3 weeks. But let's see if that applies to scrutiny, because trends, while sometimes can be correct, I mean, look at the fact that everyone picked Texas to beat Michigan, and they did. Many picked Texas to even dominate Michigan, and they did. Trends are just trends. They can be manipulated. They can have deceitful intentions behind them. Will Tennessee go on the road and handily beat Oklahoma, as this point spread implies? I look at Tennessee, and with their offense and their defense, they have Nico Imaliava as quarterback, and they have James Pierce Jr. on the defensive end. They have some X-factor players that are just wicked, that are hard to deal with. And they have really good wide receivers, a coach who is a genius in terms of developing offensive tactics and schematics in Josh Heupel. Brew McCoy looks like he's about to have a bounce-back year. They have 4 receivers of over 100 yards right now. The Volunteers do. Oklahoma only has 1 receiver, Deion Burks, with over 100 yards. Tennessee, they have 4 sacks. And right now, their leader in sacks is tied with Jacoby Thomas, Dominic Bailey, Omar Norman Lott, and Tyree West. It doesn't even look like James Pierce Jr. has a single sack yet. But I'm telling you, he's a first rounder, projected first rounder, and he's an All-American caliber defensive end right now. And you look at how Tennessee's defense has performed, like killing NC State, shutting out Kent State, doing exceptionally well against Chattanooga, as they should, and compare it to how their offense has played. There's a reason why Tennessee has a 0.725 points per play margin, which is third nationally. TeamRankings.com, with the points per play margin, is basically telling you that Tennessee right now, not adjusting for strength of schedule, is the third most dominant team in college football. Compare that to Oklahoma, who has still a pretty good 0.481 points per play margin, but that is like the same distance from last year's Michigan to, let's say, last year's Kansas State. Like, last year's Kansas State was good, but last year's Michigan was elite in terms of dominance, the most dominant team in the country last year. That right now, and again, we're only 3 games in, which is a lot different than, 15 games for last year's Michigan, or 15 for Washington, or 14 for Georgia, Texas, Alabama. Like, the sample size right now is still very small. But with how big the gap is, that does imply that even if you were to adjust for strength of schedule, or even if Oklahoma were to play a good game and Tennessee were to play just an average game, that there is something to Tennessee being the more dominant team. There just is. When you look at strength of schedule and game control, both of these teams are pretty similar. Tennessee is 5th in game control. Oklahoma is 12th. Their strength of schedules both reside outside of the top 90. Oklahoma is the 100th best strength of schedule. Tennessee is the 122nd best strength of schedule. And really, when you look at how close they are in game control and strength of schedule, it does not shock me all that much that these two teams are, well, teams that have great defenses, good offensive talent. They're both SEC caliber teams. I don't think either of these teams, as it stands right now, can be given the banner of being the best team in the SEC. And this is a big game for that reason. How well can these two teams do in this matchup? If Oklahoma wins big, or if Tennessee wins big, that's a massive statement win that could propel them to being viewed as, hey, this team can not just reach the college football playoff, but they can win the SEC and perhaps win it all. That's the broad team comparison, which, again, we like to do. The critical matchup here is Tennessee's offense, but more specifically their quarterback, their running back, and their offensive line against an Oklahoma front that's a little bit banged up, but still has a stud in Danny Stutzman and other great players on that front. I think that we understand that Tennessee does not have the passing offense they did in 2022. Probably not even the passing offense they did in 2021. And Oklahoma's secondary is really, really good. So I think that is going to be a big battle, an interesting battle. The more underrated matchup, and I think the one that will decide this game, is Tennessee's offense and really their rushing offense, because Tennessee's offense is at its best when they can run the football well against an Oklahoma team that is good on defense, great on defense, maybe even elite, but at times last year, whether it was against Kansas or Oklahoma State, they just couldn't put the run game away. They struggled against teams that were awesome at running the football outside of Texas, and even then, Texas was still able to, stay on schedule against them. That's the matchup here that I am looking most forward to, is Nico Imaliava. It's Dylan Sampson for Tennessee, and the fact that Dylan Sampson right now has 357 rushing yards. He's averaging almost 8 yards per carry with 9 rushing touchdowns. Deshaun Bishop has 222 rushing yards with 3 rushing touchdowns. Tennessee, through 3 games, this is insane. Through 3 games, they have 1,000 rushing yards and 14 rushing touchdowns, and they're averaging 7 yards per carry. And Nico Imaliava has only been sacked once. Jake Merklinger, their third-string quarterback, has been sacked more times than their starter. So this offense, specifically that ground attack, the line, quarterback play, that's what has impressed me the most. And for Oklahoma, they do have questions in the front, but they're still pretty good there. And it wouldn't shock me at all if they're able to really hold this Tennessee rushing offense in check. When you look at these offenses, Tennessee is better at quarterback, running back, tight end, offensive line. Oklahoma, if healthy, I would say is better at receiver, but they're still banged up there, and I don't know how healthy they will be come kickoff. This game, by the way, between Tennessee and Oklahoma, which is the highest ranked matchup of the week, this game, it takes place, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 6:30 p.m. Central Time, as it is in Norman, the Central Time Zone, Norman, Oklahoma. It's on ABC and ESPN+. This is, if Oklahoma, think about it this way. If Oklahoma was more dominant on offense, and if the offensive line was more clearly cohesive than it has been through 3 games, this could be a top 10 matchup. Because Oklahoma's a big name, they're a good team, there's a lot of excitement surrounding them, and they've recruited well. It's been their performance against Houston and Tulane that's held them back from being ranked higher. Like, if they were blowing out teams like they did last season with Dillon Gabriel at quarterback and a healthier receiver room, they may be top 10, and we'd have one of our first top 10 matchups and our first SEC top 10 matchup of the 2024 season. Nico Imaliava has done way better than Jackson Arnold. Far better. Imaliava has 698 passing yards. He is completing over 70% of his throws, 6 touchdown passes, 2 picks, a 182.7 passer rating. He has 102 rushing yards for a rushing touchdown as well, and he has a QBR of 80.7, which is 21st. Jackson Arnold, meanwhile, has 484 passing yards, completing only about 63% of his throws, 7 passing touchdowns, 2 picks, a passer rating of 132.3, which is only 8 points better than Cade McNamara's passer rating, and he has a QBR of 58, which is 63rd nationally. It certainly looks like, even though Dillon Gabriel's a better supporting cast, Gabriel's probably the better quarterback than Jackson Arnold, based off of what I've watched, and even factoring in supporting cast. Although when you factor in supporting cast, it's still very early, and Arnold could develop into the better quarterback. After all, he was the better recruit out of high school, and he has an arm strength talent of his that I don't think Dillon Gabriel does have. But Tennessee's better on the lines of scrimmage on offense. They have the better tight ends. They got a good transfer from Notre Dame at tight end in Holden Stays, and they also have Miles Kitselman, and they've combined for just over 100 receiving yards and also 3 receiving touchdowns. And also Ethan Davis is a backup there with 34 receiving yards and a touchdown. They're deeper and better at tight end. It's the same thing at running back, quarterback, offensive line. Wide receivers a push, but Oklahoma, I think, would have perhaps a strong edge there if they were fully healthy. Defensively, Tennessee is the better defensive line. Outside of that, I think Oklahoma has the edge at linebacker and cornerback. James Pierce Jr. is just too much of a non-negotiable for me to say that Oklahoma, even with some of the great defensive ends that they have, are better at edge. And you also have, for Tennessee, keep in mind, you got Omar Norman-Lott, Dominic Bailey, Tyree West. You got Keenan Peely at linebacker. And it's just really an impressive defense that Tennessee has put together in their defensive coordinator, Tim Banks. And you look at Oklahoma, they got Danny Stutzman, they have Woody Washington, they have, I forget the name of the player, it's escaping me, but 5-star out of high school, Peyton Bowen, yes, at safety. They also have Kip Lewis at linebacker, they have Des Malone in the defensive back room, and they have, I think, Billy Bowman Jr. as well, who has a pass defended and an interception and 11 total tackles, and Robert Spears Jennings as well. On the defensive line, you have players like Ashton Sanders, you have Devon Sears. I'm naming a lot of backups right now, but also R. Mason Thomas. And they're going to have a lot in that rotation on the defensive line because of some injuries that Oklahoma has. But Danny Stutzman, Robert Spears Jennings, Woody Washington, Billy Bowman Jr., I mean, they make up a really good secondary, really good pass defense, and efficient tacklers at linebacker. Don't forget Kip Lewis either. I do like Oklahoma's defense over Tennessee's, though it is not to the same degree that I like Tennessee's offense over Oklahoma's offense. So you got Brent Venables, a defensive-minded head coach with a team that has a much better defense than offense. You got Josh Heupel in Tennessee with a team that I will go as far to say I think they have a much better offense than defense. I mean, their defense is good. It may be great or near elite, but they haven't played anyone with an offense that is honestly worth a pulse compared to SEC or Big Ten teams, or most, honestly, ACC and Big 12 teams. I mean, NC State's looked horrific on offense. Kent State lost to an FCS team who'd never beaten an FBS team before. And Chattanooga is an FCS team. And I think also there's the idea that Tennessee is able to be so efficient on offense and rack up so many quick points that they put opposing offenses into a one-dimensional hole. And therefore, opposing offenses, when they are getting dominated by Tennessee and they're trying to score, it's like trying to put a square peg in a round hole. And I think that better offenses, Oklahoma will have the best offense. Think about it this way. Jackson Arnold, who doesn't even have a top 50 QBR, will be the best quarterback by a mile that Tennessee has played all season long. So that defense for Tennessee isn't really tested one bit. The offense is good based off of the numbers they're putting up, the talent they have, and the expertise of the staff. Oklahoma's defense and offense, Oklahoma as a team is probably more overall tested than Tennessee is. Part of it's their fault. Another part of it's the fact they have played the slightly better strength of schedule. Trench warfare in special teams. College Football with Sam is typically covering the Big Ten. But I'm going out of my way to talk about this SEC matchup because it's a big deal. It's between two teams that aren't Alabama, aren't Georgia, aren't Ole Miss, aren't Texas. They are not the preseason darlings. So I wanted to talk about it because I think that Oklahoma's a good, great team, and they have the potential to be near elite. And I think Tennessee this year may actually have some serious potential to be elite, and they're certainly a good, great, near elite team right now. I do think that Tennessee has a much better offensive line than Oklahoma. They also have a better defensive line, so consequentially I think they have a pretty big advantage in the trenches. Oklahoma, though, I think does have the better special teams than the Tennessee Volunteers. Trench play is a pretty big deal, and Oklahoma, if they want to win this game, they're going to have to come in with their pants on fire on the offensive line, and Bill Bedenbaugh is going to have to coach a very good performance and harness a good performance out of his offensive line. For Oklahoma on the defensive line, the plan is simpler. They're the best defensive line and best defense by a mile that Tennessee's played all season long. So just do what they can do what they know how to do, and maybe they'll actually dominate Tennessee's offense, or maybe they'll get dominated. We'll just have to see. And when I look at coaching here, Oklahoma's better on defense, I think by a significant margin. Tennessee is better on offense by a significant margin. And really where Tennessee has the edge in coaching is I think that Josh Heupel is a better head coach than Brent Venables. And I also think that Tennessee is better conditioned. And I think where I really see that is the trenches. And the fact that Tennessee is healthier right now. And I don't want to say injuries are like always the fault of someone, because sometimes they just happen. But having your players get repeatedly hurt or hurt to a large degree can sometimes be an indicator that there's something up with your strength and conditioning staff. And I think that Tennessee, through 3 games, and also looking at the previous 2 seasons, 3 seasons, I only really want to look at 2 because that's how long Brent Venables has been there. I do think Tennessee is well conditioned. I do think that they are strong. They're clearly trying to be physical along with being explosive and having athleticism. For Oklahoma, you just haven't seen all of those things come together yet, which is why I'm picking Tennessee to win this game. I'm picking them to cover and win big. I'm talking like 41-17 big. I don't think Oklahoma's a top 15, even top 20 team. I think they're top 25. I think they're good. And they can be great. They can be near elite. But they can't be elite with what they have on the offensive line. Tennessee can be elite. Tennessee can be as good as they were in 2022. Just with a better rushing offense, worse passing offense, and a better defense. This Tennessee team right now is dominant, and even with their weak strength of schedule, you cannot deny the sheer amount of dominance they have imposed on other teams. You can't deny that. I mean, look again at the numbers. They have had nearly 2,000 yards of offense through 3 games. They're putting up more than 600 yards per game. They're putting up like close to, if not above, 60 points per game. They've ran for over 300 yards per game, averaging 7 yards per carry. I'm a Michigan fan. I would love for Michigan in a given year to start out the season this way on the ground. This is crazy. What Dylan Sampson, Deshaun Bishop, Peyton Lewis, Nico Imaliava, and head coach and offensive mastermind Josh Heupel have done is very, very impressive. Absolutely impressive. And they have some players on defense too. Again, like James Pierce Jr. and Keenan Peely. And also Idris Farouk, who leads the team in tackles along with Will Brooks, 2 defensive backs. And Jacoby Thomas, who has a sack, a pass defended, and 9 total tackles. Like, they have players on defense. Not the same players of Oklahoma, but they have players. And combined with how electric and dominant their offenses looked, well, Oklahoma with honestly more talent than Tennessee per recruiting rankings and a similar strength of schedules looked that much more lethargic. I think that you're going to see the inevitable occur, where Tennessee is just going to do commit a microcosm of what they've done in their first 3 games. And they're going to outpace Oklahoma, make Oklahoma have to pass the ball with Jackson Arnold, and it will eventually get ugly. And by the end of the fourth quarter, we're going to be talking about Oklahoma surviving and advancing throughout the year with one of the toughest schedules in the nation, and Tennessee, who has a very workable schedule. Outside of Oklahoma, their toughest games are hosting Alabama, who they could totally beat, and playing at Georgia, which is a different challenge in and of itself. But those teams, along with Oklahoma, look to be the only teams they play all season who are ranked. So if they beat Oklahoma, like how I think they will, 41-17 dominant fashion, this team could easily go 11-1, 10-2. You may even be looking at a 12-0 ceiling of this team if Georgia's struggles against Kentucky are replicated at any point in the season. Thank you to my Patreon members for sponsoring this video and channel. I want to give a shout out to Crash2488 and Brasco Rascal for being Heisman Patreon members at $25 a month. If you sign up as a Heisman for 6 months at $25 a month, you will get signed free College Football with Sam merchandise of your choice delivered to you, plus access to my weekly college football picks straight up and also against the spread. You get access to the picks, just not the signed merchandise if you're an All-American member at $10 a month. Thanks to Chris Slayton, Connor Little, OH, Ismar, Tyler Nye, and Chilton Cush for being All-American members. And if you just want your name featured at the end of every video with a shout-out, sign up as an all-conference member for $5 a month. Thank you, John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Steele, Austin Christmas, and Shanaisha Cockrell for being all-conference members. The links to my merchandise store and my Patreon page, both ways to support the channel, are in the description and also down below in the pinned comment. And I also encourage you to join my Discord via the link in the description and also in the pinned comment. Have a great day, guys, and I will see you all soon. Bye-bye.